In this video, we are continuing our study of the pastoral letters, now looking at Paul's letter to Titus. So, of course, the author is Paul. This time the recipient is Titus, and we'll talk a little bit more about who this man was. The date is sometime around 63 AD, which would have been very close to the same time that Paul wrote his first letter to Timothy. So Titus was a Gentile that it seems had been converted by Paul on one of his missionary journeys. And once again, just as with Paul and Timothy, Paul and Titus seem to have a really close relationship. Paul refers to Titus as his true son, and Titus is a very mature and trusted companion of Paul. So Titus went to Corinth when Paul was having trouble there. If you remember from the videos, the lectures on Corinthians, there was kind of a strange mix-up there between Paul and the church at Corinth. And so Titus was kind of involved in this and helped things return back to normal. But then Titus goes on to become the primary minister or leader or pastor of the church in Crete. And this is where Titus is at the time that Paul writes this letter to him. So Paul had visited the island of Crete after his first Roman imprisonment. And when he left, so him and Titus had been traveling together, but when he left, Titus stayed behind to kind of wrap things up and tie up some loose ends. But it seems that he ended up staying there quite a while, because then Paul writes this letter to offer encouragement and instruction as he continues to lead the church here. So then, interestingly, Crete was, it had a lot going on. It was known for its immorality. I thought this was an interesting quote. A 6th century BC, so prior to Jesus, a 6th century Cretan philosopher said, "Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons." So you have kind of a weird culture going on here that doesn't really fit well with the lifestyle that Paul and Titus want the people to live as ones that are impacted by the message and person of Jesus. So obviously this would have been a quite the mission field for Titus. So then Paul's key themes in writing to Titus are to warn about the false teachers that are, once again, creeping into the church, trying to distort the gospel. Paul warns Titus on how to handle these. And then he gives instructions on teaching in the church. So remember how in Paul's letter to Timothy, there was quite a bit of a focus on church leadership and how those in the church should lead and what kind of lives they should have. And so this theme kind of continues in Paul's letter to Titus as he gives characteristics of leaders in the church and how to teach in the church. And then finally, he also gives instructions on Christian living. So not just directed at the leaders in the church, but just for all people that claim to follow the way of Jesus. He gives instructions on how they should live. And then, once again, another very simple outline, only 3 chapters. The first chapter is about leader qualifications. So remember, as I said in the lecture about 1 Timothy, that Paul writes, he gives a list of qualifications for leaders, and these lists are often used today. So this second list that Paul had written is included here in his letter to Titus. And then in chapter 2, we see him talking about teaching sound doctrine, and the idea of the false teachings creeping into the church plays into this, because Paul is wanting to instruct Titus on sound doctrine, on correct doctrine. And then finally, going on to the idea of just good works, this plays into the theme of Christian living, of living as Jesus would have his followers live. So this is a short book that you can read in just a little bit of time, and I think now you're prepared. You're good to go.